The humans were coming, and every alien child in the galaxy trembled in terror at the mere mention of their name. On the Tellarite homeworld, young Sagan squirmed under his blankets as his father tucked him in for the night. "Papa, tell me a scary story," Sagan pleaded, his eyes wide with anticipation. His father sighed, knowing that there was only one tale that could truly frighten a Tellarite child. "Very well," he began, his voice low and ominous. "Let me tell you about the humans." The council members murmured in disbelief, knowing the devastating power of the ancient artifact. The Void Shard, capable of creating miniature black holes, could annihilate entire star systems if wielded as a weapon. They had exhausted all options to retrieve the shard, as their most skilled agents had failed, and Dr. Zorak had vanished without a trace. In desperation, the council turned to their last resort, the humans. Nicholas Williams, a battle-hardened ex-military operative with a reputation for achieving the impossible, stood before them. The High Chancellor briefed him on the dire situation, emphasizing the grave consequences if the Void Shard remained in the wrong hands. Nicholas, intrigued by the challenge and eager to prove humanity's worth, accepted the mission without hesitation. The Council provided him with the Artemis, a state-of-the-art ship equipped with advanced technology, and a crew of specialists from various alien races to assist him. As Nicholas and his team set out to hunt down Dr. Zorak and recover the Void Shard, Sagan's father continued the tale, his voice filled with a mix of awe and dread. "The humans, my son, are unlike any other species in the galaxy. They are unpredictable, relentless, and frighteningly resourceful. If anyone can retrieve the Void Shard and save us all, it is them." Sagan listened intently, his heart pounding with a combination of fear and fascination. He wondered what challenges the humans would face and how they would overcome them. As he drifted off to sleep, the image of Nicholas Williams and his crew embarking on their perilous mission filled his dreams, leaving him both terrified and inspired by the legendary beings known as humans. As Sagan drifted off to sleep, his dreams carried him to the bridge of the Artemis, where Nicholas Williams and his crew were hard at work tracking down the rogue scientist, Dr. Zorak. The ship's sensors had picked up a faint trail leading to a seedy space station known as the Rusty Bolt, a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and other unsavory characters. Nicholas knew that they couldn't just barge in and start asking questions. He needed to be smart about this. He turned to his crew and said, "All right, listen up. I'm going to go undercover as a Tellarite smuggler. It's the only way we're going to get any information about Zorak's whereabouts." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but they trusted their captain's judgment. Nicholas donned a disguise complete with a fake snout and a tattered cloak, and made his way into the Rusty Bolt. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of stale alcohol and sweat. Shady characters of all species huddled around dimly lit tables, their eyes darting suspiciously as Nicholas passed by. He made his way to the bar and struck up a conversation with a surly-looking Tellarite. "I heard there's a scientist hiding out somewhere in this sector," Nicholas said, keeping his voice low. "Goes by the name of Zorak. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" The Tellarite eyed him warily before leaning in close. "I might have heard something, but information like that doesn't come cheap." Nicholas slid a few credits across the bar. "I'm sure we can come to an arrangement." Over the next few hours, Nicholas worked his way through the Rusty Bolt, using his wit and charm to gain the trust of the local criminals. He bought drinks, played a few rounds of high-stakes poker, and even got into a brief scuffle with a drunken Klingon. But in the end, he got what he came for. Zorak hired a group of mercenaries to protect him, a grizzled old human smuggler told him. "Last I heard, they were headed to some uncharted planet called Zephyrus Prime." Nicholas thanked the man and made his way back to the Artemis. But as he approached the airlock, he was confronted by a group of heavily armed Tellarite bounty hunters. "Going somewhere, human," their leader snarled, leveling a blaster at Nicholas's chest. Nicholas slowly raised his hands, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Gentlemen, I'm sure we can work something out." But the bounty hunters weren't interested in negotiation. They opened fire, sending a hail of laser bolts ripping through the air. Nicholas dove for cover, drawing his own weapon and returning fire. His crew, alerted by the commotion, rushed to join the fray. The docking bay erupted into chaos as the two sides exchanged fire. Explosions rocked the station, sending debris and sparks flying in all directions. Nicholas and his crew fought with the skill and precision of a well-oiled machine, but the bounty hunters were relentless. Just as it seemed like they might be overwhelmed, Nicholas spotted an opening. He signaled to his crew and they made a break for the airlock, leaping through the hatch just as another explosion tore through the docking bay. Back on the Artemis, Nicholas and his team gathered around the ship's main console, analyzing the data they had gathered. "Zephyrus Prime," Nicholas said, pointing to a blinking dot on the star map. "That's where we'll find Zorak and the Void Shard." But as they plotted their course, they realized that the planet was located in a region of space known for its treacherous anomalies and strange gravitational fluctuations. Navigation would be extremely dangerous, and there was no guarantee they would even make it to the surface in one piece. As the Artemis approached Zephyrus Prime, the ship was suddenly caught in a powerful energy storm. The hull groaned and shuddered as the storm tossed them about like a toy boat in a hurricane. Alarms blared and sparks flew as systems began to malfunction. Nicholas gripped the helm, his knuckles white as he fought to keep the ship on course. The crew scrambled to keep the engines online and the shields intact, but it was a losing battle. The storm was unlike anything they had ever encountered, a swirling maelstrom of raw, untamed energy. Nicholas gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face as he wrestled with the controls. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This was nature itself, a force beyond their understanding or control. But he refused to give up. With a shout of determination, he wrenched the ship to the side, narrowly avoiding a massive bolt of lightning that would have torn them apart. The crew held on for dear life as the ship spun and tumbled, alarms blaring in their ears. Nicholas's eyes darted across the console, his mind racing as he tried to find a way out of the storm. But every path seemed blocked, every escape route cut off. They were trapped at the mercy of the raging tempest. Suddenly a massive shockwave slammed into the ship, sending them careening off course. Nicholas fought to regain control, but it was like trying to steer a bullet. The ship was in free fall, plummeting towards the surface of Zephyrus Prime at terrifying speed. Nicholas's hands flew across the controls, desperately trying to slow their descent. But the storm had taken its toll, and the ship was barely responding. They were going to crash, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. As the ground rushed up to meet them, Nicholas closed his eyes and braced for impact. He had faced death before, but never like this. Never so helpless, so utterly at the mercy of fate. The ship hit the ground with a deafening roar, metal screaming and sparks flying as it tore itself apart. Nicholas was thrown from his seat, his body slamming against the bulkhead with a sickening crunch. Pain exploded through his every nerve, and the world went black. "Sound off!" he croaked, his voice hoarse from the smoke. One by one his crew responded, their voices weak but alive. They stumbled out of the ruined ship and into a world unlike any they had ever seen. Towering trees with luminescent leaves cast an eerie glow across the jungle floor. Strange, chittering cries echoed through the undergrowth, setting their nerves on edge. "Set up a perimeter," Nicholas ordered, his training taking over. "We need to secure the area and assess our situation." But before they could even begin, a blood-curdling shriek pierced the air. A pack of creatures burst from the foliage, their 4 eyes glinting with hunger and malice. They were like nothing the crew had ever encountered, with razor-sharp claws and fangs dripping with venom. Nicholas and his team reacted instantly, their weapons snapping up to meet the threat. Laser fire lit up the jungle as they fought back against the predators, their shots finding their marks with deadly precision. But the creatures were fast and agile, darting in and out of range with blinding speed. One of them lunged at Nicholas, its claws raking across his chest before he could bring his gun to bear. He staggered back, blood seeping through his torn uniform. The crew fought with everything they had, their advanced weapons and hand-to-hand combat skills put to the ultimate test. They moved with a fluid grace that belied their human origins, their every motion a testament to the years of training and experience that had brought them to this moment. In the end, it was Nicholas who brought down the last of the predators, his knife finding the soft spot beneath its armored hide. The creature let out a final gurgling cry before collapsing to the ground, its eyes glazing over in death. The crew stood panting amidst the carnage, their weapons still raised and ready. But as the adrenaline faded, they began to take stock of their surroundings. "Look," one of them said, pointing to a trail of advanced technology leading deeper into the jungle. "That has to be Zorak's hideout." Nicholas nodded grimly. "Then that's where we're going. We didn't come this far to give up now." They followed the trail, their senses on high alert for any sign of danger. The jungle seemed to close in around them, the bioluminescent plants casting eerie shadows across their path. Finally, they came to a hidden entrance set into the side of a cliff face. It was clearly of advanced design, with sleek metal panels and glowing control interfaces. Nicholas stepped forward, his hand hovering over the access panel. "Get ready," he said, his voice low and tense. "We don't know what we're walking into." The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor that stretched out before them. They moved forward cautiously, their weapons at the ready. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves in a vast underground laboratory complex. Banks of computers and strange, pulsating machines filled the space, their purpose unclear. And there, standing at the center of it all, was Dr. Zorak himself. He was surrounded by a group of heavily armed mercenaries, their weapons trained on the intruders. "Ah, Nicholas," Zorak said, his voice dripping with malice. "I was wondering when you would show up." Nicholas stepped forward, his gun leveled at the rogue scientist's chest. "It's over, Zorak. Hand over the void shard and come quietly." But Zorak just laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that sent shivers down their spines. "You really think it would be that easy? You have no idea what you're dealing with." With a flick of his wrist, he activated the device he had been working on. It was some kind of amplifier designed to boost the power of the void shard to unimaginable levels. They fought with everything they had, their advanced weapons clashing against the mercenaries' brute force. But even as they took down their opponents one by one, Zorak was making his escape, the void shard and amplifier device clutched tightly in his hands. Nicholas spotted him fleeing down a narrow corridor and gave chase, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't let Zorak get away, not with the fate of the galaxy at stake. The corridor led to a narrow bridge spanning a chasm filled with pulsating energy. Zorak stood at the center, the amplifier device humming with power. But Zorak just smiled, a twisted, maniacal grin that sent shivers down Nicholas's spine. "You fool, you have no idea what you're dealing with." He activated the amplifier, and the void shard began to glow with an otherworldly light. The air around them began to twist and distort, the very fabric of space-time bending to the shard's will. Nicholas lunged forward, grappling with Zorak for control of the device. They struggled back and forth, the bridge swaying dangerously beneath their feet. In the midst of their struggle, the amplifier device was damaged, sparks flying from its shattered casing. The void shard began to pulse with an erratic, sickening light, and a miniature black hole began to form at its center. Nicholas felt the pull of the singularity, his feet sliding out from under him as he was dragged towards the edge of the bridge. He scrabbled for purchase, his fingers clawing at the metal grating. With a final desperate effort, he managed to overpower Zorak and wrench the void shard from his grasp. The scientist stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror as the black hole began to consume everything in its path. Nicholas stared at the shard in his hand, his mind racing as he tried to think of a way to stop the singularity before it destroyed the entire complex. The black hole was growing larger by the second, its gravitational pull becoming stronger with each passing moment. He knew he had to act fast, but what could he do? The void shard was too powerful, too unpredictable. If he made one wrong move, it could mean the end of everything. Nicholas's mind raced as he stared into the heart of the growing singularity, the void shard pulsing erratically in his hand. He knew he had to act fast. Tapping his comms, he contacted his crew. "Zorthal, Axorian, do you read me?" "Loud and clear, Captain," came the response, punctuated by the sounds of laser fire and explosions. "We're still engaged with the mercenaries. What's your status?" "The black hole is growing. We need to find a way to counteract it before it consumes the entire complex." Nicholas's voice was tense as he dodged a falling beam, the structure around him crumbling under the intense gravitational forces. Zorthal's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, I have an idea. If we can modify the power core to create a reverse gravitational field, it might be enough to stabilize the singularity. I'll need to access the power core room, and I'll need time." "Understood. We'll clear a path and hold off the mercenaries. Just get it done." Nicholas turned to the rest of his crew. "You heard the man. Let's move." They fought their way through the disintegrating complex, Nicholas leading the charge as he blasted through falling debris and energy discharges. His crew followed close behind, their weapons blazing as they cut down the remaining mercenaries. As they reached the power core room, Zorthal rushed to the controls, his fingers flying over the interface as he worked to modify the core's settings. The rest of the crew took up defensive positions, ready to fend off any incoming threats. "Step away from the controls," Dr. Zorak demanded, his weapon trained on Zorthal. Nicholas and his crew found themselves outnumbered and outgunned, the mercenaries closing in around them. But Nicholas was known for his unorthodox tactics. He stepped forward, his gaze locked with Dr. Zorak's. "How about a wager, Doctor?" Nicholas's voice was calm, belying the tension in the room. "You and me one-on-one. Winner takes the void shard and control of the complex." Dr. Zorak's lips curled into a sneer. "You're in no position to bargain, human." "Maybe not. But I know you, Zorak. You're arrogant. You want to prove your superiority. Here's your chance." For a moment, Dr. Zorak hesitated, his gaze flickering between Nicholas and the void shard. Then, with a nod, he handed his weapon to one of the mercenaries. "Very well. Let's settle this." The two men circled each other, their eyes locked in a fierce battle of wills. Then, with a roar, Dr. Zorak lunged forward, his cybernetically enhanced fist aimed at Nicholas's head. Nicholas ducked and countered with a blow to Dr. Zorak's midsection, his raw strength pitted against the scientist's cunning enhancements. They traded blows in a brutal dance, each seeking to exploit the other's weaknesses. As they fought, Zorthal worked frantically at the power core controls, sweat beading his brow as he raced against time. The rest of the crew kept the mercenaries at bay, their weapons flashing in the dimly lit room. Dr. Zorak's fist connected with Nicholas's jaw, sending him staggering back. But Nicholas rallied, his adaptability shining through as he changed tactics, using his opponent's momentum against him. With a final, desperate effort, Nicholas landed a devastating blow, sending Dr. Zorak crashing to the ground. The scientist lay still, his cybernetic enhancements sparking and twitching. "Now, Zorthal!" Nicholas shouted, his voice hoarse. The Axorian engineer slammed his hand down on the controls, activating the reverse gravitational field. The complex shuddered violently, the very fabric of space-time warping around them as the two forces clashed. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance, the black hole and the reverse field locked in a titanic struggle. Then, with a blinding flash of light, the singularity began to shrink, the gravitational forces dissipating as the power core's field gained the upper hand. In the heart of the complex, the reverse gravitational field pulsed and thrummed, the power core straining to contain the immense energies at play. Nicholas and his crew stood transfixed, watching as the miniature black hole slowly shrank, its all-consuming hunger finally sated. But their relief was short-lived. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, a deep, ominous rumbling that grew louder with each passing second. The walls of the complex cracked and splintered, chunks of debris raining down around them. "The planet's core is destabilizing," Zorthal shouted over the din. The energy released from the clash must have triggered a chain reaction. Nicholas cursed under his breath. They had stopped the black hole, but now they faced an even greater threat. The entire planet was tearing itself apart, and they were trapped in the middle of it. "We need to get out of here now," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Grab Dr. Zorak and head for the Artemis." The crew sprang into action, Axorian and Zorthal seizing the rogue scientist by the arms and dragging him along as they raced through the crumbling corridors. The ground heaved and buckled beneath their feet, molten lava bubbling up through the cracks. Nicholas led the way, his keen senses guiding them through the labyrinth of falling debris and collapsing tunnels. They dodged and weaved, their hearts pounding in their chests as they pushed themselves to the limit. At last they burst out into the open air, the jungle around them now a hellish landscape of fire and brimstone. The Artemis lay ahead, partially buried under a mound of rubble and twisted metal. But they had no choice. The planet was coming apart at the seams, and they needed to get off the surface before it was too late. Nicholas racked his brain, searching for a solution. And then it hit him. The Void Shard. If they could harness its power, they might be able to create a controlled singularity, one strong enough to generate the gravitational pull needed to launch them into orbit. It was a crazy plan, a desperate gambit that could just as easily tear them apart as save them. But as the ground shook and the fires raged around them, Nicholas knew they had no other options. "Listen up," he shouted, his voice cutting through the roar of the collapsing planet. "We're going to use the Void Shard to get us out of here. Zorthal, Axorian, start gathering any parts you can salvage from the Artemis and the complex. We need to build a makeshift launcher, and we need to do it fast." The crew hesitated for a moment, their eyes wide with disbelief. But then they nodded, their trust in their captain overriding their doubts. They scattered, scouring the wreckage for anything they could use. Nicholas turned to Dr. Zorak, his eyes hard and unforgiving. "You're going to help us, Doctor. You got us into this mess, and now you're going to get us out of it." The scientist glared back at him, his face twisted with hatred, but he said nothing, knowing that his own survival depended on the success of their plan. As the crew worked feverishly to assemble the launcher, Nicholas prepared the Void Shard, his hands steady despite the chaos raging around him. He could feel the artifact's power thrumming through his fingers, a cold, alien sensation that set his teeth on edge. At last the launcher was ready, a ramshackle contraption of salvaged parts and jury-rigged components. Nicholas placed the Void Shard into the firing chamber, his heart pounding in his chest as he activated the device. The Void Shard began to glow, a swirling vortex of dark energy forming around it. The launcher shook and rattled, the metal groaning under the strain. "Everyone strap in," Nicholas shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the vortex. "This is going to be a bumpy ride." The crew scrambled to secure themselves, their faces pale with fear and determination. Nicholas took his place at the controls, his hands gripping the steering column with white-knuckled intensity. He waited, watching the vortex as it grew and pulsed, his mind racing as he calculated the precise moment to fire. The ground shook and heaved beneath them, the planet's surface crumbling away into a yawning abyss. And then, with a roar of engines and a blinding flash of light, Nicholas fired the launcher. The crew was catapulted into the air, their screams drowned out by the deafening roar of the collapsing planet below. They hurtled through the atmosphere, the vortex's energy shielding them from the searing heat and crushing pressure. The launcher shook and rattled around them, the metal creaking and groaning under the immense strain. But Nicholas held steady, his keen spatial awareness and lightning-fast reflexes guiding them through the maelstrom. He twisted and turned, dodging chunks of debris and jets of superheated plasma, his eyes locked on the rapidly approaching edge of space. And then, with a final shuddering jolt, they broke free of Zephyrus Prime's gravity well. The planet imploded behind them, a cataclysmic blast of light and energy that lit up the void of space like a supernova. Nicholas and his crew watched in stunned silence as the planet collapsed in on itself. The once lush jungles and towering mountains, reduced to a swirling mass of molten rock and metal. It was a testament to the destructive power they had narrowly escaped, a sobering reminder of the stakes they faced in their mission to save the galaxy. But they had made it. Against all odds, they had survived the impossible, their human ingenuity and determination triumphing over the forces of chaos and destruction. As they drifted through the cold emptiness of space, the Artemis a battered but unbroken shell around them, Nicholas allowed himself a moment of relief. As the Artemis drifted aimlessly through the void, Nicholas and his crew huddled together in the cramped confines of their makeshift escape pod. The life support systems flickered and sputtered, the air growing thin and stale with each passing hour. They had managed to send out a distress signal, but hope was fading fast. "How much longer can we last?" Axorian asked, his voice weak and strained. Nicholas checked the readouts, his brow furrowed with concern. "A few more days, maybe, but we're running low on food and water." They rationed their meager supplies, each crew member taking only the bare minimum to survive. Nicholas tended to their injuries as best he could, using what little medical equipment they had salvaged from the Artemis. Hours turned into days and still no sign of rescue. They floated in the vast emptiness of space, their minds growing hazy and their bodies weak. Just as they were about to give in to despair, a sudden jolt rocked the escape pod. "So what was that?" Zorthal exclaimed, his eyes wide with fear. Nicholas checked the sensors, his heart pounding in his chest. "We're caught in some kind of tractor beam. A ship is pulling us in." The crew scrambled to arm themselves with whatever weapons they had left, preparing for the worst. As the escape pod was drawn into the massive hangar bay of the unknown spacecraft, they braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. The hangar doors opened with a hiss, revealing a group of heavily armed insectoid aliens. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed in the harsh light, their compound eyes fixed on the human crew with cold, calculating intensity. "Kilthax," Axorian whispered, his voice trembling with fear. "They're notorious for their brutality." The Kilthax commander, a towering warrior with scars crisscrossing his carapace, stepped forward. "I am Zargoth," he hissed, his mandibles clicking with each word. "You will surrender the Void Shard to us." Zargoth's eyes narrowed, his clawed hand tightening around his plasma rifle. "You dare defy the Kilthax Dominion?" But before he could continue, Dr. Zorak stepped forward, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I have a proposition for you, Zargoth," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "Release me, and I'll give you the Void Shard. These humans mean nothing to me." Zargoth considered the offer, his mandibles twitching with interest. "Very well," he said, gesturing to his guards. "Release the traitor." Nicholas watched in horror as Dr. Zorak was freed from his restraints, the rogue scientist smirking as he handed over the Void Shard to the Kilthax commander. "I can't do this," Nicholas shouted, lunging forward, but he was quickly subdued by the Kilthax guards. As Dr. Zorak was led away, Zargoth turned to Nicholas and his crew, his eyes glinting with triumph. "Take them to the brig," he ordered, his voice cold and brutal. "Their fate will be decided later." Nicholas and his crew were roughly dragged away, their weapons confiscated and their hopes shattered. As they were thrown into the cramped, dimly lit cell, Nicholas could only watch as Zargoth held up the Void Shard, his mandibles clicking with malevolent glee. "With this power, the Kilthax will conquer the galaxy," he declared, his voice echoing through the ship. "None shall stand in our way." Nicholas slumped against the cell wall, his mind reeling with the weight of his failure. But even in the depths of despair, a spark of determination flickered to life within him. He would find a way to escape, to stop the Kilthax and reclaim the Void Shard. The fate of the galaxy depended on it. Nicholas slumped against the cold metal wall of the Kilthax brig, the weight of their situation pressing down on him like a physical force. The cell was cramped and dimly lit, with barely enough room for his crew to stretch out. A pair of insectoid guards stood watch outside, their compound eyes glinting in the flickering light. Nicholas scanned the cell, his mind racing as he searched for a way out. His eyes fell on a small pile of debris in the corner, bits of metal and wire that had been left behind by previous occupants. An idea began to form in his mind. Moving quietly, so as not to attract the attention of the guards, Nicholas sifted through the debris. He selected a few thin, sturdy pieces of metal and a length of wire, then set to work fashioning them into a crude lockpick. Hours passed as he worked, his fingers cramping and his eyes straining in the dim light, but at last he held up the finished product, a small, twisted piece of metal that just might be their ticket to freedom. Nicholas waited until late into the night cycle, when the guards were at their most inattentive. Then, with a final glance at his crew, he approached the cell door and set to work on the lock. It was delicate, painstaking work. The lock was complex, with multiple tumblers and fail-safes designed to keep prisoners in, but Nicholas was patient, his hands steady as he manipulated the crude lockpick. With a final twist, there was a soft click and the door swung open. Nicholas quickly motioned his crew forward and they slipped out into the corridor beyond. The ship was a maze of twisting passages and shadowy alcoves. Nicholas and his crew moved silently, their senses on high alert as they searched for any sign of the void shard or a means of escape. They ducked into alcoves and pressed themselves against walls as patrols passed by, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they neared the ship's central control room, they heard voices coming from within. Nicholas motioned for his crew to stop, then crept forward to listen. "Sir, once we have the singularity in place, the galaxy will be ours for the taking," Zargoth was saying, his voice filled with cruel anticipation. "The galactic capital will be reduced to rubble, and the Kilthax will rise as the undisputed rulers of the cosmos." Nicholas felt a chill run down his spine at the Kilthax commander's words. They had to stop him, no matter the cost. He turned to his crew, his expression grim. "We need to split up," he said, keeping his voice low. "Zorthal, take Axorian and Taruk. See if you can find a way to sabotage the ship's weapons and propulsion systems. The rest of you with me. We're going after the Void Shard." The crew nodded, their expressions determined. They knew the stakes and they were ready to do whatever it took. Nicholas led his team through the ship's winding corridors, following the schematics they had managed to download from a terminal along the way. The vault housing the Void Shard was deep within the ship, guarded by layers of security and Kilthax warriors. As they approached the vault, Nicholas signaled for his team to stop. He surveyed the area, taking note of the guards' positions and the various security measures in place. "Okay, here's the plan," he whispered, his eyes glinting with determination. "Tarek, you're on hacking duty. See if you can bypass the security systems. Axorian, you and I will take out the guards, fast and quiet." The team moved into position, their movements precise and coordinated. Taruk pulled out a small device and set to work on the vault's security systems, his fingers flying over the interface. Nicholas and Axorian crept forward, their weapons at the ready. They moved in perfect sync, taking down the guards with quick, silent efficiency. The Kilthax warriors crumpled to the ground, their weapons clattering against the metal floor. With the guards neutralized, Taruk finished his work on the security systems. There was a soft hiss as the vault door slid open, revealing the void shard within. Nicholas reached out and took the artifact, its surface cool and smooth against his skin. He could feel its power thrumming within, a vast and terrible energy that could unmake worlds. But before they could make their escape, a piercing alarm sounded throughout the ship. Red lights flashed and the sound of heavy footsteps filled the corridor. Nicholas cursed under his breath. They had been discovered. Zargoth rounded the corner, flanked by a squad of elite Kilthax warriors. The Kilthax commander's eyes narrowed as he saw Nicholas and his team, the Void Shard clutched in their hands. "You dare defy the Kilthax?" Zargoth snarled, his mandibles clicking with rage. "You will pay for your insolence with your lives." The Kilthax warriors surged forward, their weapons blazing with energy. Nicholas and his team dove for cover, returning fire with their own weapons. The corridor erupted into chaos, the air filled with the scent of ozone and burnt chitin. Nicholas and his team fought with everything they had, their agility and tactical prowess pitted against the Kilthax's brute strength and superior numbers. Nicholas ducked and weaved, his weapon flashing as he took down warrior after warrior. But the Kilthax just kept coming, their chitinous armor absorbing the worst of the blows. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared and the lights flickered and went out, plunging the corridor into darkness. Nicholas's heart raced as he realized what had happened. Zorthal and his team had done it. They had managed to overload the ship's power core. The ship began to tear itself apart, the metal groaning and buckling as the core went critical. Explosions rocked the vessel, sending warriors and debris flying. Nicholas stumbled as the deck heaved beneath his feet. He gripped the void shard tighter, his mind racing as he tried to find a way out of the collapsing ship. Nicholas and his team fought their way through the collapsing Kilthax ship, explosions rocking the corridors and debris raining down around them. The void shard was secure in Nicholas's grasp as they raced towards the hangar bay, desperate to escape the doomed vessel. They burst into the hangar where Zorthal and the others were waiting, surrounded by the twisted wreckage of Kilthax fighters. "We've got a way out," Zorthal shouted over the din of the disintegrating ship. He pointed to a small fleet of intact fighters, their sleek insectoid designs gleaming in the flickering light. Without hesitation, Nicholas and his crew climbed into the fighters, their hands flying over the unfamiliar controls as they powered up the engines. The hangar bay doors shuddered and began to buckle, the vacuum of space threatening to tear them apart. "Punch it!" Nicholas yelled, and the hijacked fighters blasted out of the hangar, just as the Kilthax ship exploded behind them, sending shockwaves and debris hurtling through space. But their escape was far from clean. The remaining Kilthax fighters swarmed around them, their weapons blazing as they sought to avenge their fallen comrades and reclaim the void shard. Nicholas took the lead, his fighter dancing through the debris field with incredible speed and agility. He pushed the alien craft to its limits, pulling off maneuvers that defied physics and reason, his human reflexes and intuition proving more than a match for the Kilthax's raw power. His crew followed suit, their fighters weaving and dodging through the chaos, their weapons finding their marks with pinpoint accuracy. The space around them lit up with explosions and scintillating energy beams, the wreckage of destroyed Kilthax ships tumbling past them as they fought their way clear. At last they broke free of the debris field, leaving the last of their pursuers behind. Nicholas let out a shaky breath, his hands trembling on the controls as the adrenaline began to fade. "Everyone report in," he called over the comms, his voice ragged. One by one his crewmates responded, their voices filled with a mix of relief and exhaustion. They had done the impossible, had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, and had the void shard in their possession once more. Nicholas punched in the coordinates for the nearest friendly outpost, eager to put some distance between them and the site of their harrowing battle. But as the stars stretched into the familiar lines of warp travel, a sudden, chilling realization washed over him. "The void shard," he said, his voice tight with dread. "It's been transmitting our location." Zorthal's voice crackled over the comms, his words confirming Nicholas's worst fears. "It's a failsafe embedded within the shard itself. Zargoth must have activated it before his ship was destroyed." Nicholas's mind raced, the implications of this new development hitting him like a physical blow. Zargoth was still out there, tracking their every move, determined to reclaim the void shard at any cost. They couldn't return to the outpost, couldn't risk leading the Kilthax commander straight to their allies. They had to run, had to find a way to evade their relentless pursuer and remove the tracker from the shard. Nicholas made a quick decision, his jaw tightening with resolve. "We're going off the grid," he said, his fingers flying over the navigational controls. "We'll make a series of jumps through uncharted wormholes, try to shake Zargoth off our tail." His crew responded with grim nods, their trust in their captain unwavering even in the face of this new challenge. They knew the risks, knew that each jump would take them further into the unknown, into the deep, dark reaches of space where anything could happen. But they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could protect it from the destructive power of the Void Shard. As they prepared for the first jump, Nicholas felt a flicker of fear in his heart, a primal terror of the unknown that even his years of training and experience couldn't fully suppress. But he pushed it down, focusing instead on the task at hand, on the million tiny calculations and adjustments that would carry them through the wormhole and out the other side. The stars blurred and stretched around them as they made the jump, the fabric of space-time bending and warping in ways that defied comprehension. For a heartbeat, an eternity, they hung suspended in the void, their minds and bodies stretched to the breaking point by the impossible forces at work. And then they were through, the wormhole spitting them out into a new region of space, a vast uncharted expanse of swirling nebulae and glittering star clusters. But even as they caught their breath, even as they marveled at the alien beauty around them, they knew that their respite would be short-lived. Zargoth was still out there, still on their trail, and he would stop at nothing to reclaim the Void Shard and unleash its destructive power upon the galaxy. They had to keep moving, had to stay one step ahead no matter the cost. And so they jumped again and again, each wormhole taking them further into the unknown, each new sector of space bringing with it new dangers and challenges. They encountered strange alien species, some friendly, some hostile, some utterly incomprehensible. They faced cosmic storms and gravitational anomalies that threatened to tear their ships apart, their human ingenuity and adaptability pushed to the limit as they fought to survive. And all the while Zargoth pursued them, his ship a relentless shadow at the edge of their senses, his determination to reclaim the Void Shard never wavering. Nicholas and his crew grew haggard and worn, their supplies dwindling and their spirits flagging as the days turned to weeks, the weeks to months. They knew they couldn't keep running forever, knew that eventually their luck would run out, and Zargoth would catch them. Desperate for a solution, Nicholas reached out to the Galactic Council, his message a plea for help from the greatest minds in the galaxy. He told them of the tracker embedded within the Void Shard, of the relentless pursuit of Zargoth, and of the dire consequences should the Kilthax commander succeed in his mission. The Council responded with all the resources at their disposal, their top scientists and engineers working around the clock to find a way to remove the tracker and end the chase. But even as they labored, even as they pored over the data and schematics that Nicholas and his crew sent them, they knew that time was running out. The Galactic Council's response was swift and decisive. A team of their brightest minds, led by the renowned Nebulan scientist Dr. Zilros, was dispatched to rendezvous with Nicholas and his crew at a remote, abandoned space station. The station, once a thriving hub of intergalactic commerce, now floated silently in the void, its corridors dark and lifeless. As the two ships docked, Nicholas greeted Dr. Zilros and her team with a mixture of relief and apprehension. They wasted no time in getting to work, the station's long-dormant systems humming to life under their expert touch. Dr. Zilros, her violet eyes gleaming with excitement, examined the Void Shard with a series of advanced scanning devices. She worked tirelessly, her slender fingers flying over the controls as she sought to unravel the mysteries of the ancient artifact. Meanwhile, Nicholas and his crew set about fortifying the station's defenses. Knowing that Zargoth would not be far behind, they sealed off unused sections, redirected power to the shields, and manned the weapon systems, their faces grim with determination. As the hours ticked by, Dr. Zilros made a startling discovery. She called Nicholas and his crew to her lab, her voice trembling with excitement. "The Void Shard," she said, holding up the pulsing obsidian artifact. "It's not just a weapon, it's a key." She went on to explain that the shard was connected to an ancient, interdimensional gateway known as the Nexus. If they could activate the gateway and send the Void Shard through it, it would be lost forever, beyond the reach of those who would use it for evil. But there was a catch. Activating the Nexus required a tremendous amount of energy, more than the station's power core could provide. The only nearby source capable of generating that much power was a dying star, its core unstable and ready to go supernova at any moment. Nicholas and his crew exchanged glances, the weight of the decision heavy on their shoulders. They knew the risks, knew that harnessing the power of a dying star was a dangerous gambit. But they also knew that they had no choice. Together with Dr. Zilros and her team, they devised a plan. The station was equipped with an advanced solar collection array designed to gather and store energy from nearby stars. If they could modify the array to channel the energy directly into the void shard, they might just be able to activate the nexus. It was a delicate operation, requiring precise calculations and split-second timing. They would need to maintain the perfect balance between collecting enough energy to power the nexus and avoiding the destructive force of the star's final moments. As they made their preparations, the proximity alarms blared to life. Zargoth had arrived, his fleet of Kilthak's ships dropping out of warp on the edge of the system. Nicholas and his crew rushed to their stations, the station's weapons powering up as they prepared for the fight of their lives. Dr. Zilros and her team worked frantically to align the solar array, their fingers flying over the controls as the countdown to the star's supernova ticked ever closer. The first wave of Kilthak's fighters screamed towards the station, their weapons blazing as they sought to overwhelm the defenders. Nicholas and his crew fought back with everything they had, the station's cannons and shields holding firm against the onslaught. But Zargoth's forces were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Nicholas knew they couldn't hold out forever. They needed more time. In a flash of inspiration, he hatched a daring plan. Leaving Zorthal in command of the station's defenses, Nicholas gathered a small strike team and boarded a shuttle. They rocketed away from the station, weaving through the chaos of the battle towards Zargoth's flagship. The Kilthak's commander was caught off guard by the audacity of the move, his ship's defenses slow to react, as Nicholas and his team blasted their way into the hangar bay. They fought their way through the ship, their weapons flashing as they cut down Kilthak's warriors left and right. Finally they reached the bridge, bursting through the doors to find Zargoth waiting for them. The Kilthak's commander rose from his throne, his eyes glinting with malice as he drew his weapon. "You dare to challenge me, human?" he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. "I will crush you like the insect you are." Nicholas said nothing, his jaw set with determination as he charged forward. The two warriors clashed, their weapons locked together in a deadly embrace. They fought back and forth across the bridge, their movements a blur of speed and precision. The battle was fierce, neither combatant giving an inch. But Nicholas had one advantage Zargoth did not, the indomitable human spirit. He fought with a ferocity born of desperation, his every blow fueled by the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. With a final mighty effort, Nicholas broke through Zargoth's defenses, his blade finding the chink in the Kilthak's commander's armor. Zargoth stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief as he clutched at the wound. "How?" he gasped, his voice filled with a mixture of pain and anger. "How could a mere human defeat me?" Nicholas stood over him, his chest heaving with exertion. "Because we never give up," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Because we will always fight for what is right, no matter the odds." He turned to his team, who had been holding off the bridge crew during the duel. "Set the charges," he ordered, his eyes never leaving Zargoth's face. "We're going to blow this ship to hell." As they made their way back to the airlock, the ship shuddered violently around them. Dr. Zilros's voice crackled over the comms, her words laced with urgency. "Nicholas, the nexus is open. The void shard is being pulled towards the gateway." Nicholas cursed under his breath. They were running out of time. He pushed his team forward, their boots pounding against the metal grating as they raced towards their escape. But as they reached the airlock, a massive explosion rocked the ship. The charges had detonated, tearing through the bridge and sending shockwaves rippling through the hull. Nicholas and his team were thrown off their feet, their bodies slamming against the bulkheads. Nicholas struggled to his feet, his head ringing from the blast. He looked back towards the bridge, his eyes widening at the sight of Zargoth's lifeless body, still bound to his command chair by his own restraints. There was no time to dwell on the Kilthax commander's fate. Nicholas and his team stumbled into the airlock, sealing the hatch behind them just as another explosion tore through the ship. They launched themselves into space, their suits' thrusters propelling them towards the station. But as they approached, Nicholas's heart sank. The station was coming apart, massive chunks of debris hurtling through the void as the Nexus's gravitational forces tore it asunder. Nicholas watched in horror as a jagged piece of metal slammed into the escape ship, its engines sputtering and dying as it spun out of control. Dr. Zilros and her team were trapped, their fate sealed by the cruel whims of chance. Nicholas made his decision in an instant. He angled his thrusters, propelling himself towards the crippled vessel. With a final burst of speed, he slammed into the side of the ship, using his own momentum to push it clear of the station's debris field. The escape ship's engines flared to life, carrying Dr. Zilros and her team to safety. But Nicholas had no time to celebrate. The Nexus's pull was growing stronger by the second, and he found himself caught in its inexorable grip. He watched as the void shard disappeared into the swirling vortex, a sense of grim satisfaction filling his chest. His mission was complete. The galaxy was safe, at least for now. As the station crumbled around him, Nicholas activated his suit's recording device. He spoke quickly, his words tumbling out in a rush as he raced against the clock. "This is Nicholas Williams, captain of the Artemis. If you're hearing this, then I've succeeded in my mission. The void shard is gone, lost to the depths of the Nexus. But our work is far from over. There will always be those who seek to do harm, to use power for their own gain. We must remain vigilant, always ready to face the next threat." He paused, his eyes fixed on the swirling gateway before him. "Remember, the galaxy is counting on us. We are the defenders of peace, the guardians of justice. We must never waver in our resolve, never falter in our duty. For we are human, and we will always stand tall in the face of darkness." With a final defiant smile, Nicholas cut the recording. He closed his eyes, his mind filled with images of his crew, his friends, his family. They would carry on without him, he knew. They would continue the fight, no matter the cost. And as the Nexus claimed him, drawing him into its swirling depths, Nicholas felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had given his life for something greater than himself, had sacrificed everything for the sake of the galaxy. Sagan's father fell silent, his eyes distant as he finished the tale. The boy looked up at him, his face filled with wonder and awe. "Did Nicholas really do all that?" he asked, his voice hushed. "Did he really save the whole galaxy?" "I want to be like Nicholas when I grow up," Sagan said, his eyes shining with excitement. "I want to go on adventures and fight bad guys and save the galaxy." His father laughed, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "I'm sure you will, Sagan, but remember, being a hero isn't about glory or fame. It's about doing what's right no matter the cost, just like Nicholas did." Sagan nodded solemnly, his young mind already racing with dreams of future exploits. He snuggled deeper into his blankets, his eyelids growing heavy as sleep began to claim him. His father stood, making his way to the window. He stared out at the stars, their cold light casting a pale glow across his face. Somewhere out there, he knew, new dangers were waiting, new threats that would require the bravery and sacrifice of heroes like Nicholas to overcome. But for now there was peace, and as he watched his son drift off to sleep, his mind filled with tales of human courage and valor, Sagan's father knew that the galaxy was in good hands. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.